Can you elaborate what that means to be a pissed off optimist so our listeners and our viewers, if you're watching this on YouTube, can understand a little bit more of your journey and how you got to your particular point of view on design?
Sure, sure. Thanks so much for that question. This term, I swear, Sarah, my co-founder, coined it, and I just recently been hearing from her that she thinks I did that. So I can't now. Nobody seems to remember who first came up with this term, but I think the two of us would identify as that very early on, and the idea of wanting to be a balance of recognizing how broken and sort of screwed up the world seems to be, and certainly since January, that feels to be even more heightened. But the idea that we might also want to maintain a level of optimism or hope that things can be better might seem as though they are incongruous or um, mutually exclusive. And I think the idea that actually we could be both at the same time and that we might need to be both might be a way to help navigate how crazy things feel right now. And actually, it's more like a perpetual state of being. Because if we can't do both, you might overcome with too much anger or be overcome with too much naivety and maybe miss something. So we thought it was important that we kind of name this feeling of being an pissed off optimist for ourselves. And we've actually found that it's been quite a helpful way of identifying our clients. It's been a helpful way of identifying people we've hired at the studio. And then it turns out, I think, after somewhat thinking about it a little more, we started naming it a little more frequently at everywhere. And we think
Yeah.
there's a bunch of pissed off optimists all over the place.
Yeah, that's great. For me, that motto, that tagline, pissed off optimist, it kind of reminds me philosophically of what it's like to be a designer in general, because in on one hand, like the pissed off part is like being a constant malcontent or we're unhappy with the status quo, right? It's like the world could be more beautiful, more just, whatever. That's why we make new things or redesign existing things. And then the optimism part is like you have to believe that things can be better or else there's kind of no point in doing your work, right? So like it's this kind of constant tension of like not being so naive, but also like not being angry all the time and finding that in between space is like I think the drive for a lot of designers and other creative folks.
Yeah, I think that that is very much tied to an attitude of design. And I do think that the creative act of making new things or stewing on something and then generating something in response is itself a form of resistance. And it's a
Mhm.
form of not letting the status quo become the only reality we have. I think designers are uniquely suited to create whole new worlds when given the chance. And we wouldn't want to do that if we didn't think that there's something perhaps could be maybe improved upon or better or more just. And I think when I was early on in my career, I think I just wanted things to be cooler. I think it was
Yeah.
really as basic as that. Like, this is not as cool as it could be. And I think I've started to realize that perhaps the brokenness or the way things are right now might not just be because of a temporary moment in
Mhm.
time, but rather because the systems have been set up that way. So that kind of awareness, I think, is a very sobering realization, and I think it's part of my journey as a designer in working in the social sector.
Totally. And you're kind of taking this on the road, right? You're doing a tour. We were talking about this before we started rolling, but you're currently on an Angry Hour for Pissed Off Optimists tour on multiple cities. So can you tell us more about that? What inspired you to create that? How has it been going so far?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting chance right now where Sarah and the team and I have been thinking about how to be more in person with so many other pissed off optimists that we might know or perhaps haven't yet met. And the idea of being able to do that in person with very little programming, very little sort of like formal structure. There's not really a run-off show. It is literally meet for drinks after work. And
Yeah.
we realized that if we could name it and then have the idea that going there will let you meet with other people who are like-minded,
Hmm.
might take care of a big chunk of the programming and the facilitation, because perhaps when you go to those events, there's a lot more structure when people are misaligned. And I
Hmm.
think being attitudinally aligned takes actually does a lot of the heavy lifting. So being attitudinally aligned means that you could show up at a place for drinks and kind of go, "Oh my God, this can you believe this just happened?" Or "Have you seen this latest headline?" Or "This nuttiness doesn't seem real. Are you seeing what I'm seeing?" And I think in some other spaces that might not always be true. So meeting up for drinks, being able to vent a little, but then also know that you're in community with other like-minded people. We thought there might be value in that, so we have now done it in Chicago, and we sold out 100 tickets. We did it in Brooklyn. We sold out for 100 tickets there. Also, sorry, 60 tickets. And we had some really great assistance from Stacy, who runs the AIGA New York chapter. And so we have Philadelphia and Austin on the books, with Sarah going to be handling the Austin one. And others are to be
Yeah.
announced. And hopefully we'll do a couple more.
Wonderful. Yeah, that sounds like a great way to like send a different kind of bat signal out there. So it's not necessarily just a sort of profession based or demographic based thing. It really is like, as you were saying, attitudinal. So you're trying to get like-minded people in a room together, right? Especially after being apart during the pandemic, or just feeling isolated because of what's going on in politics and world events and things like that.